Congress grills the FBI director over Hillary Clinton's email investigation.
When I look at the facts we gathered here, as I said, I see evidence of great carelessness.
Why he defends his decision not to seek criminal charges. Donald Trump on Capitol Hill, how he's trying to build support within the Republican Party. Another police shooting generates protests, what the victim's girlfriend caught on camera. And a verdict in the Vatileaks trial. What will happen to the 5 people who were charged? On EWTN News Nightly for July 7th, 2016.
You mentioned that there was no precedent for this, but we believe that you have set a precedent, and it's a dangerous one.
The FBI director defends his decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton for using a private email server 48 hours after James Comey said Clinton was extremely careless with classified information when she served as Secretary of State. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We go straight to Capitol Hill reporter Jason Calvi, who was inside the House Oversight hearing room today. Jason.
Lauren, Comey faced 4.5 hours of questions. Republicans say there's a double standard. An average Joe would be arrested, but Hillary Clinton gets out scot-free. Democrats call this hearing political theater.
Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
That's not true.
Despite that, FBI Director James Comey defends his Tuesday statement that no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case.
And we don't want to put people in jail unless we prove that they knew they were doing something they shouldn't do.
Texas Republican Will Hurd is a former CIA agent.
So the former Secretary of State had a server in her basement that had information that was collected from our most sensitive assets, and it was not protected by anyone. And that's not a crime? That's outrageous.
This to me is personal, because when you're mishandling classified information, that puts people at jeopardy.
When asked, Comey admitted if someone was careless with classified information at the FBI, that person could be fired. Republicans want accountability.
There's nothing to keep a future Secretary of State or President from this exact same email scheme.
Disgusted Democrats say Republicans should accept the decision and not waste money.
Some Republicans who were praising you just days ago for your independence, for your integrity, and your honesty instantly turned against you because your recommendation conflicted with the predetermined outcome they wanted.
I predict they'll be calling for more hearings, more investigations, all at the expense of the taxpayer.
And the FBI director says a team of 15 to 20 people crammed 3 years of work into just 12 months. Comey was Deputy Attorney General in the George W. Bush White House. He was appointed to the 10-year term as FBI director by President Obama. He says he was registered Republican, but is no longer affiliated with any party. Lauren?
Thank you, Jason. Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Donald Trump reaches out to rank-and-file Republicans in Congress. He had several meetings today in the nation's capital. Wyatt Goolsby reports from the Republican National Committee headquarters. Wyatt.
Lauren, Donald Trump is offering a simple message to his fellow Republicans. We all share in the same Republican Party goals. Many GOP members are welcoming his assurances as they want to make sure Hillary Clinton is defeated in the fall.
The GOP presidential candidate wants to reassure Republicans he's the man for the job. His first stop was the Capitol Hill Club, where he met with more than 200 members of the House, including Speaker Paul Ryan.
This was the first time just about every one of our members had a chance to actually meet and engage with Donald Trump. So I thought it was great that he came.
Ryan says Trump talked about policy and winning the White House. Some House Republicans aren't convinced by the billionaire businessman, but many agree they need to get behind him.
He's engaging in a way that I don't think the candidacy for presidency has ever done before. You see him speak from the heart. You see him speak without a teleprompter. The people are begging for leadership, and he's offering that fresh leadership.
After his meeting with House Republicans, Trump met with their counterparts in the Senate. The gatherings come less than 2 weeks before the Republican National Convention, which a number of leading Republicans are skipping. Congressman Charlie Dent says, quote, Trump has a lot of work to persuade many Americans, including myself, that he is able to lead this great country.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go.
Dozens of protesters awaited Trump, shouting slogans and waving signs. Morgan Williams with American Bridge, a liberal super PAC, says voters need to hold members of Congress responsible if they stand with Trump. She says he's running a campaign full of hate.
He, for example, just this week had all this controversy with the anti-Semitic tweet that went out and hasn't really apologized for any of that, and that's unacceptable, and we cannot have the President of the United States be saying these awful, hateful, racist things.
There were several dozen Republicans who did not meet with Trump today. Some of them have not publicly endorsed him. The meetings come as two potential vice presidential picks, Senators Bob Corker of Tennessee and Joni Ernst of Iowa, have indicated they are not interested in running on the same ticket as Trump. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsby on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Wyatt. Donald Trump praised former House Speaker Newt Gingrich during a campaign stop in Cincinnati last night. Trump says Gingrich would be part of his administration, but he stopped short of saying he would be a pick for vice president.
I'm not saying it's Newt, but if it's Newt, nobody's going to be beating him in those debates, that's for sure, right? Nobody.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and Indiana Governor Mike Pence are also being vetted as possible running mates. Kate Bennett is White House correspondent for Independent Journal Review, and Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Well, you heard Donald Trump there, and he just tweeted that it was a, quote, very interesting day, exclamation point. Bob, tell me, what do you think that this accomplished?
Well, he needs to unify the party, and he's not going to unify the party completely. But I think these meetings were positive. They had some frank discussions. That's what members of Congress said. But both Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell said the meetings were good. So it's a small step toward unity.
Paul Ryan actually put out a tepid statement, and he said, we are all about defeating Hillary Clinton. Kate, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that he is any closer to getting these senators and other representatives to decide to come to the actual convention?
I mean, I think it's going to be tricky, and the ones that have said they're not going are definitely not going to go. But today he did have a win with Ted Cruz. He met with Senator Cruz, who said that he wouldn't give an endorsement, but he would speak at the convention. So that's a win considering their past. But senators like Ben Sasse of Nebraska still maintain that they're never Trump people.
And Senator Jeff Flake has said that he would rather cut his grass
than go to the
convention.
Yes.
Excellent. Let's go back to what dominated the cable airwaves today, which was FBI Director Comey's testimony about his decision not to indict Hillary Clinton. It was a 4.5-hour hearing, as you heard Jason Calvi say. And I'm just wondering, is this something that is going to hurt Republicans as moving forward if they continue to harp or they continue to try to unearth more information out of an investigation that's been going on for quite a long time? Bob?
I think it depends on how they handle it. I think Republicans handled it okay today. They want to get the transcript, which unbelievably, this thing was not recorded.
How could the FBI director not have recorded this?
Apparently, it's part of the FBI policy, other than extreme cases, and they didn't make an exception here. So there's no transcript, no audio available. There is a summary of it. Now, Comey said also, if you lie to the FBI, well, then you can still go to jail. But if you do lie to the FBI, there's no tape of it. So
so what does it matter?
Right. Yeah, I think, again, it's how the Republicans, they were very respectful to Comey, and they should be. He was very well respected on the Hill, and I think they're going to have to play. I think it reflects, again, on Hillary and the Democrats more than it does the Republicans.
Okay. Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, and Kate Bennett with Independent Journal Review. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Barack Obama leaves on a 5-day mission to boost a beleaguered Europe and hold back an aggressive Moscow. He will attend a summit of NATO allies in Warsaw before his first presidential visit to Spain. It's expected to be his last official visit to the continent. A second police shooting death in as many days sparks outrage, this time in Minnesota, where the governor says race played a factor. The victim's girlfriend recorded a video moments after an officer opened fire. Let's take a look.
He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket, and he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet.
His girlfriend says he was shot for no reason. The school cafeteria supervisor's mother says, quote, he was just black in the wrong place.
My son was a law-abiding citizen, and he did nothing wrong. He had a permit to carry, but with all of that, trying to do the right things and live accordingly by the law, he was killed by the law.
Yesterday, a police shooting in Baton Rouge also prompted protest and a Justice Department investigation. Texas wants to require that aborted babies either be buried or cremated. Republican Governor Greg Abbott ordered state health officials to propose the changes. A federal judge in Indiana put a similar measure on hold. Abbott says babies should not be treated like medical waste. And an Iowa church takes legal action against the state over its sexual orientation and gender identity law. The Cornerstone World Church sent a demand letter to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission fighting the state's gender identity laws. The commission says they must follow the law because churches are public places of accommodation. On Monday, the commission put out a brochure implying that the laws would only apply when a church is holding a non-religious activity. The Iowa church says the commission does not have the authority to change the church's doctrine or operation. Ken Klukowski is senior counsel at First Liberty Institute, the law firm representing Cornerstone. Ken, welcome to the program.
Lauren, thanks for having me.
Explain to me why the church is taking legal action.
Well, because Iowa's sexual orientation and gender identity law, or SOGI law, as we say for short, does not exempt churches. They are treated as a public accommodation, the same as a restaurant or a hotel, in terms of adopting the gender identity agenda.
Meaning having bathrooms that are not gender specific. Okay.
That's right.
They put out a brochure, the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. It says Iowa law provides that these protections do not apply to religious institutions with respect to any religious-based qualifications, little legalese here, when such qualifications are related to a bona fide religious purpose. That says to me, if someone is giving a sermon or saying Mass, this isn't a Catholic church, that you're exempt from the law.
A couple things on that. First of all, that brochure is not legally binding.
Okay,
What's legally binding is what the law says, and the law does not include any type of protections along those lines. But even within the brochure, that same brochure goes on to say our church is exempt, and then says explicitly sometimes, and goes on to say that it's not exempt for if it's running a service accessible to the general public, and it specifies childcare, such as during sermons or Mass, and goes on to say that that a church is not exempt for events that are open to the general public. Church services are open to the general public. In the law, whenever you have a broad statement and then a more narrow statement, when they're in conflict in court, a court will give effect to the more narrow statement.
What this is a firing shot. It's a letter. You're sending a letter to the Civil Rights Commission saying, no, this isn't going to happen. What do you think they're going to say? What's the next step?
Well, the reality is that when you're suing a sovereign state, unlike a city or a municipality, you also have an issue called sovereign immunity that you have to deal with. The 11th Amendment provides some level of protection, 11th Amendment to the Constitution, to states. And so this is a statute that has previously not been applied to churches. And so we are both giving an opportunity to avoid conflict and also making sure that we have a case that is ready to go to court by bringing this all to the ICRC's attention, to use the abbreviation, and to tell them, we need you to explicitly declare that our client will not be prosecuted for performing its normal activities in a way that you're saying would be at odds with SOGI. It's not just using bathrooms. It means employees of the church have to refer to someone he or she according to their gender identity.
Sounds good. So when you hear back from the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, you'll come back and tell us about it, right?
I'll be looking forward to it.
Okay. Ken Klukowski, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, the Vatileaks trial ends with a mixed verdict, why some suspects won't face punishment. And conscience rights, protecting doctors and nurses who don't want to participate in abortions. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The verdicts are in for 5 suspects accused of leaking confidential Vatican documents. Our Rome producer, Mary Shovlain, joins us now. Mary, what did the tribunal decide?
Well, the verdict is in, and so far there are 2 convictions, that of Monsignor Vallejo Balda and that of Francesca Sciacqui, the PR executive, both on the Financial Reform Commission. Both received sentences today from the Vatican court. The Monsignor received an 18-month sentence, and Francesca Sciacqui received a 10-month sentence, but she will not see the inside of a jail cell. Her sentence has been postponed for 5 years, which means basically she will serve no time, but if she commits another crime within those 5 years, she will go to prison. The Monsignor is expected to pass the rest of his sentence and the 9 months that are still lacking on his 18-month sentence inside the Vatican, and not in a jail cell, but where he has been passing this time during his arrest. Nicola Maio, the assistant to Monsignor Balda, has been absolved, found not guilty, and the 2 journalists who were on trial for publishing the leaked documents, the Vatican said it did not have the jurisdiction to convict them, so they're off as well. And they're seeing that as very much as a victory, as they saw this as an attack on freedom of the press.
Is the Vatican sending a message, and if so, what is it?
Yeah, I think the message that the Vatican wants to send, they enacted this new law in 2013 to say any leaking of documents is a crime. So the pressure was on to show that this law had teeth. And so basically this almost 9-month-long trial is showing that they're taking this very seriously. I think that's the message they wanted to send.
Mary, it's been said that the most likely scenario is that in this year of mercy, all the accused in the case will receive a papal pardon. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, that's what a lot of us are wondering. Will they receive a pardon? Because you have to remember, in 2012, under the first Vatileaks, Paolo Gabriele, who was under trial at that time, he did receive a sentence. But after 3 months of serving his sentence, Pope Benedict, the Pope at the time, went to visit him and pardoned him after just 3 months of his sentence. Will Pope Francis do the same? Monsignor will be the only one here in the Vatican serving his time. So many are wondering, will Pope Francis, the Pope of Mercy, in this year of mercy, be granting any pardons? That is yet to be seen. Of course, he's the Pope of surprises, so we'll keep you posted on that if he does.
Mary Shovlain, our producer in Rome. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Lauren.
He is the Pope of surprises, and he named Chicago Archbishop Blaise Cupich to be a member of the Vatican office that vets bishops' nominations. In 2014, Francis handpicked Cupich to lead the Chicago Archdiocese in his first major appointment for the U.S. Church. He is a known moderate like Francis and replaced the late Cardinal Francis George, who was an aggressive defender of orthodoxy. A House committee will host a discussion on conscience rights tomorrow. Participants will discuss how to prevent government discrimination against healthcare workers and facilities which refuse to participate in abortions. Lewis Brown is director of CMF CURO, a National Catholic Healthcare Ministry. Lewis, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that many of our viewers might be thinking. What are conscience rights?
Right. The right of conscience is the right to live your life, to live your religious freedom as you believe you are called to do, to live your vocation both in the home and in the public square, in one's professional life and one's personal life. A great saint of religious freedom and conscience rights is St. Thomas More, who exercised his conscience to make sure that we are free to do what we believe to be right.
Okay, good. So tomorrow, the House committee, you're going to have a forum and you're going to discuss conscience rights about healthcare. How common is it that Catholic healthcare workers have to go against their conscience?
It's increasingly more and more common. We hear stories of medical students having issues in medical school when they're getting matched to a hospital in some form or fashion because of their Catholic faith, because of their religious faith. You also understand, you've heard a lot about the California abortion mandate, where the state of California is requiring all health care insurance plans to provide abortion coverage, including elective abortions, even for religious employers.
All right, tell us about the bill designed to protect these conscience rights.
The bill is extraordinarily important. It's H.R. 4828. It's the Conscience Protection Act of 2016. The bill does three things. First, it prohibits the federal government, state or local government from discriminating against healthcare practitioners, healthcare providers, healthcare entities. It also provides them with the right to sue in the event that they've been discriminated against, and it just advances the protection around religious freedom, the ability for these organizations and individuals to do what they're called to do.
Is this going to pass?
We believe it will pass in a floor vote. We think
But-
that this is a winning issue, but we need all the help that we can get from Americans across the country, Catholic or not Catholic, believers in the goodwill of the country to protect religious freedom, protect the right of conscience.
Louis Brown, Director of CMF CURO and National Catholic Healthcare Ministry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Up next, more turmoil in Britain after the country votes to leave the European Union, how it's affecting markets around the world. And trip to space, who's headed to the International Space Station. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Britain is on course to get its first female prime minister since Margaret Thatcher. Conservative lawmakers have chosen Home Secretary Theresa May and Energy Minister Andrea Leadsom to fight a runoff contest for leadership of the country's governing party. The winner will replace Prime Minister David Cameron, who resigned after Britain voted last month to leave the European Union. The new leader will be responsible for leading exit negotiations with the EU. She will also help to steady the country's economy, which has been deeply shaken by the market's reaction to Brexit. Dr. Maria Sophia Aguirre is a professor of economics at the Catholic University of America. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, is it really all doom and gloom that there's going to be a terrible economic problem since Britain has left the EU?
I don't think so.
You don't?
I don't think so. All it will depend, of course, on what will the terms be once they, what are the agreements that they come up after the formal exit. But I have to say, I think we have to remember that, first of all, the UK was never part of the European Union. They were not part of the monetary union, so the transaction costs were already there. It's true, we are looking at low interest rates.
Well, I'm sorry, what do you mean they were never part of the European Union?
They were part of the European Common Market, but not part of the European Union because they were never part of the euro.
Okay, I got you now. The markets were relatively calm after Brexit.
Yes.
And then that was an initial drop, and the pound has fallen again.
Yes.
And do you think that, we're going to continue to see this cycle? And how does this really affect us here in America?
Okay, I think a couple of things. One is that I think the markets are overreacting. I think we will see a calm situation once the new prime minister is pointed out, or the negotiations or the outcomes of the negotiations are clearer. But from an economic point of view, what we have to say is, yes, there is a deficit. Yes, foreign direct investment is iffy, but I think that will get settled quickly once they see that the real impact is not that big. The big question on all the fronts, when you look at trade, when you look at is employment, right? Is what is the impact that that's going to have in people who are living right now in England?
Do you predict that there will be big repercussions for the EU?
No, neither for the EU, or more for the EU, I would say, than for the United States. In the EU, there might be impact, but again, all will depend on the negotiations. But in principle, I mean, let's remember 80% of all the GDP of the UK are services, not real production.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria Sophia Aguirre, Catholic University of America.
Thank you very much.
More people will soon be able to take trips to Cuba. The U.S. tentatively approved flights to the island from 10 U.S. cities, including Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, and Los Angeles. President Obama visited Cuba this year, signaling warming relations. Our embargo with the country has not been lifted. A female NASA astronaut is expected to be the first person to sequence DNA in space. Kate Rubins is among 3 people headed to the ISS, International Space Station, aboard a Russian space capsule. It's scheduled to dock with the space station on Saturday, and that's a lot of S's. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless.